Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a book review of The Wolf of Oren-yaro by K.S. Villoso. So this book, as far as I can tell, was actually a self-published series, and it recently got picked up for publication by Orbit Books. So this is one that's been on my radar for a really long time, thanks to the amazing folks at the Fantasy Inn, which is an amazing book blog, and I'll link them down below if you want to check them out. But because of them, I've wanted to read this for absolute ages. So when I finally got the opportunity to give this a try, I was very excited and I had very high expectations, and I ended up absolutely loving this book. So before we get started, we have the usual disclaimers. I was indeed sent a copy of this book for review by the publisher, Orbit Books, but that does not impact my opinion on the book whatsoever. Also, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, which is actually going to be a little bit tough because there's a lot of stuff that happens towards the end of this book that I really desperately want to shout about, but I'm gonna stay quiet. So there's a lot of setup and backstory for this book. Basically, we have this woman named Talion who is the queen of her people, and many years ago, her father basically launched the land into civil war. It was a horrible war in the way that a very kind of shaky peace was negotiated, that his daughter, Talion, was going to marry the son of basically the rival on the opposite side of the war, and they were going to rule together. So they've been betrothed since birth. They married, they had a kid, and the night before they were going to be coronated, her husband leaves. And no one really knows why. Obviously, she knows why, but it's been kind of this huge sticking point for her rule. So we flash forward about 5 years later, and she receives a letter from her estranged husband, who she hasn't seen since he walked out on her and their child and their entire country, and he basically wants to open up discussion for reconciliation and for kind of negotiation of how to carry on. Which is great. So she sets out with some of her advisors and her guard, and then she goes to this foreign land, basically, and things don't necessarily go as planned. There is an assassination attempt and she has to escape, and suddenly for the first time in her life she is alone and she has to survive and get back home to her son and to her people. So that's a very long explanation, but this book is just absolutely amazing. As I'm sure you can imagine, there is a lot of setup for the actual story, so I did find it a little bit difficult to get into initially. I picked it up and put it down a couple of times until basically I was on the train back from Edinburgh when we went on holiday the other week, and it was on my Kindle, and I kind of sat down, got stuck into it, and read a more significant amount than I had previously, and I really got into the story. So this might be one that you find a little bit slow because there's so much that needs to be established in order to move forward with the plot. I'd say that a lot of the action begins probably about 100 pages in or so. The world building in this book is really incredible, and I really enjoyed it. It's much more of a, it's not a light touch because there's a lot of world building that happens, but she does it in such a way that it really folds into the story incredibly well, and you're being fed a lot of information about the world, particularly about politics and about history and relationships between different people and different clans, but it's done in such a way that you almost don't notice and you pick it up really easily, which is always something that I very much appreciate. There are kind of two main regions in this world, and they are very distinctive, and she does a great job of really making sure that you can separate the two in your mind because they are very different places. So we have Jinseyang, which is the place that Talion rules and her husband is supposed to rule, and it's very much a country that has been torn apart by war. It used to be very prosperous, it used to be a very different place, and through history that she kind of weaves in and sort of the politics of the times, it's basically kind of fallen apart. It is crumbling, and she's desperately trying to hold the country together because she loves her country so much. And then we have the Empire, which is the place that she travels to. She goes to various cities in the Empire in this book, and it is a very different feeling place where her people very much value kind of honor and rule following, and she really struggles with people who don't do that. These people are very different. They are people who are very kind of deceptive and out to kind of self-serve, and she really struggles with kind of the cultural differences. And it's really fantastically done. I very much enjoyed it. You get lots of great descriptions of food as well, which is something that I always really enjoy. You get a lot of politics, another thing that I absolutely love, and I thought she did such a great job with the world building. So the story itself is great and the world building is great, but for me the place where this book really shines is the characters, because this is very much a character driven book. So if you're interested in that kind of thing like I am, this is definitely one to pick up. And obviously Talion is the kind of the main character. She's the one point of view character. It's told in the first person. We see everything through her eyes. And what's really interesting about this book and the way that that is handled in particular is I feel like a lot of this is about perceptions and expectations. So people view her as a very different person, I think, than how she views herself. She is known as the bitch queen. She murdered a man the night before she was crowned queen. She drove her husband away into exile. She's this kind of frightening person. There's a lot of kind of running jokes about decapitation, like she's just gonna chop people's heads off. So people have this very strong idea of who she is. However, she is very different because we get to know her because we see everything through her eyes. Also, we see everything through her eyes, therefore we see her expectations of what other people are like. We see how she views other people, and that's not necessarily the way that people actually are, and I thought that was fantastic and really well done. We are clouded by her judgment in this book, and she's not necessarily the best judge of character. I think that she is maybe a little bit more trusting than she should be. She's a little bit naive in some ways because she has always grown up at court surrounded by people, and it's really fascinating to see the world through her eyes and realize that maybe things aren't necessarily as they seem. So on top of all of that, I just love her as a character. She is so fantastically written and such a wonderfully built and complex character. I am a huge fan of difficult women, shall we say, or sometimes I like to call them just women who have feelings. She's not someone who's going to appeal to everyone because she is not particularly nice. She's called the bitch queen for a reason, like, let's be honest. She has a huge rage problem, and her anger gets in the way a lot, and she has a huge problem with pride. She's an incredibly proud person, and she very much acknowledges that that has been an issue in the past. However, she is also a mother, which is not something that you always see with main characters in fantasy. The mothers are usually secondary characters, kind of matronly, you know, figures getting in the way of everyone's fun, or they are very, very much in the background, or they're just dead. So having a main character who is a mother, especially someone who is kind of a difficult woman like her, is just amazing, and it's something that we so rarely see. I would love to read more fantasy books featuring mothers as main characters, but she has that kind of softness and that love and affection toward her son, and she also loves her horrible husband who left her. And that complicates her so much and adds so many layers to her character, and I absolutely adored her. I think she's amazing. She's easily one of my new favorite characters ever. This book was just so much fun. I really enjoyed it. It is full of twists and turns. There's so much that happens in this book, and it is paced incredibly well once we get past kind of the initial sort of hump, I found. And it is super fun. It's a great read. It has an amazing cast of characters. A lot of the secondary characters are just wonderful, absolutely incredible, and I loved everyone's interactions with each other, and I love the way she interacted with other people, because again, it's the first time in her life that she has really been alone without all these people to lean upon, and it's just so well done. I really enjoyed it, and I think that if you are interested in books that have really strong female leads, if you are interested in books that have difficult women as their main characters, kind of not your average fantasy heroine, and if you're interested in character-driven books and East Asian settings, I would so highly recommend this. So that is it for this video. Sorry, Sophia wandered in. I would love to know in the comments below if you have read this book. Let me know what you thought, whether it's positive or negative. If this book has been on your radar, if it's in your TBR, I would love to hear from you. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.